Hello, we are back again, and now we are going to talk some actual football. We are jumping ahead, or really actually jumping back. We are going to be looking at week one in the National Football League. Starting it off, we got to start off the marquee matchup of the weekend. The Indianapolis Colts going to Mile High and squaring off with the Denver Broncos. Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning finally beat the Colts in his second try, and so now he has beaten all 32 teams in the National Football League. Only the second quarterback to do that behind Brett Favre. So an interesting little tidbit there. Broncos look great early on.
Yeah, Julius Thomas, 3 touchdown catches, first 3 of the game. I mean, Peyton was, even without Wes Welker, it was kind of as we expected. Peyton didn't miss a step. Just too easy for him.
28-7 Denver at halftime. It looked like, wow, the Broncos offense has not skipped a beat in the offseason. But then the Colts made it interesting in the second half, pulling within a touchdown and having a drive to potentially tie the game late in the fourth quarter that stalled. But great comeback by the Colts.
Yeah, no, they played especially well in the fourth quarter. They outscored them 14-7. It kind of looked like maybe they were going to come back. It looked like after the first half being down 24-7, it looked maybe it was over for them there. But yeah, they played well, and Andrew Luck led the troops back but couldn't finish.
That's definitely a positive for the Colts to take away that they looked like they were dead in the water at halftime, being down 24-7 against that potent Denver offense. It looked like this could be a blowout at Mile High. But then, Andrew Luck leading the charge, leading them back. Really, even though they lost, I'd take positives away from this game for the Colts. They were right there with Denver, who was the top team in the AFC last year, and I really don't see them falling off from that much at all this year.
No, definitely not. And I think you're right. Definitely take away positives rather than negatives from this game. They went up against the Denver Broncos. You can't expect to win. They played very well. Andrew Luck had 53 attempts. That's kind of a lot, but I mean they were trailing 24-7. You got to expect that. But he played well. I think all around they played well, and it was nice to see the former Giant Hakeem Nicks catch a touchdown pass. Looks like maybe he could have an impact with that.
I see Nicks having a pretty nice season this year with the Colts. I think he fits well into that system, and Luck's going to be looking at him a lot. But, I could definitely see these two teams squaring off again in the playoffs, divisional round. It could be another matchup at Mile High, and Indianapolis now knows that they can go toe-to-toe with Denver, and that's an important thing, to have that confidence if you're going in against the top team, to know that you can go pretty much pound for pound with them. The Colts, I think, in my mind, took a big step in the right direction. Think about it. The last time they were on the football field in a meaningful game before then was the playoffs, when they got shellacked by my New England Patriots divisional weekend. And it looked like they made great strides last year, winning the division, going 11-5, making it to the divisional round, coming back against the Chiefs. But then they showed that they're not an elite team in that game, and the Patriots just ran all over them. Shane Vereen had a huge game. But now to be dead in the water against the Broncos and come back with a chance to tie the game with under 2 minutes to go, really, I think that's a lot more impressive than going 11-5 last year, to show that, hey, we can be right up there with the cream of the crop.
Yeah, that's huge. And Andrew Luck is really, he's just playing very well, and I think he's molding himself into a franchise quarterback, and maybe not the next Peyton Manning, because that's not so easy to replicate, but it looks like a bright future for the Colts. It really does.
Absolutely. The Colts 1-0, but they'll be fine. They'll easily be a 10-win, at least 10 wins this year. But now jumping over to the other primetime games from this past week, we had Monday night, a doubleheader on ESPN, kicking off the Monday Night Football portion of the season. First game, not too exciting. The Detroit Lions, 35-14 over the hometown New York Giants. Calvin Johnson, my gosh, what a phenomenal player there. 7 receptions, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns. Megatron.
I know, it's like, what can he do? He's a fantasy nightmare, really, if you're playing up against him. It's nightmare fantasy-wise and real life, too. I mean, it's kind of scary, all these things that he could do. He really, really kind of changes the whole dynamic of the game. No one can guard him.
And on one of his touchdown passes, I don't know how this happens to the Giants secondary. He got behind everybody in the Giants secondary. I mean, he was all alone, wide open, just him and green grass, or actually turf because it was the dome at Ford Field. But just like, how do you let the best wide receiver in the game get that wide open?
Right. How can you miss his huge frame going right past you and waiting right there in the back of the end zone, you know?
A very interesting stat here. Johnson had 164 yards receiving. Johnson had 164 yards. Eli Manning threw for 163 yards. When one receiver has more yards than the opposing team's quarterback, that's telling you something.
That's not a good look for Eli right there.
I mean, the Giants, they don't look as terrible as last year at the beginning of the year, but they didn't give their fans much confidence with that performance. 2 picks by Eli, one of them just for a veteran like Eli, you can't make that throw. One of them, he was on the run, threw cross body where there were like 3 defenders around one receiver. What did he expect was going to happen when he let go of that ball? I really don't know, but you know, it's still very early. The Giants, I don't see them starting off quite as horrifically as they did last year, starting off 0-6, but the future, or at least this season, does not look too bright if you're a fan of Big Blue.
No, and I think that's kind of what the fans expected. That's not what they want, but I don't think they're expecting much from this team this year.
And the other game was a lot closer and more interesting. I mean, you had the San Diego Chargers and the Arizona Cardinals. Chargers holding a 17-6 lead entering the fourth quarter, and the Chargers, being the Chargers, found a way to lose. Losing 18-17, Carson Palmer leading 2 touchdown scoring drives in the fourth quarter to lead the Cardinals to victory in this game. You know, the Cardinals are that team that flies under the radar, and they're good.
Yeah, they are. We definitely overlooked. I think personally, I overlooked them this last week when we were talking about them. I think I said maybe they'd go 7-9, and I think they really showed that they could be a premier team, and maybe last year wasn't a fluke. They could make some noise. Obviously tough out there in the NFC West, but I think they're for real. They can make some noise out there.
They're a solid team that they're not flashy. They don't have the elite offense like Denver does. They don't have the elite defense like Seattle does. But they're just a team that gets the job done, and they go about their business. They don't get much publicity. And really, you have to give props to Bruce Arians. He has done a phenomenal job there. I mean, first, going back to his days in Indianapolis, filling in for Chuck Pagano, leading the team to a 9-3 record with him as interim head coach. Then he gets the gig in Arizona, leads them to 10-6 last year. I mean, he's a coach that not a lot of people talk about, but he is definitely one of the best coaches in the NFL.
Yeah, no, he's definitely flying under the radar, and it's funny too because obviously over in Indianapolis he was working with Andrew Luck, but last year he had Kevin Cobb. That's a 10-win season there, and now he's got Carson Palmer, so we can see what he's gonna do with Palmer.
Yeah, and really, he's done such a phenomenal job. He finds ways to win games, but also you have to look at it. The Chargers, they find ways to lose games. I heard a stat this morning on Mike and Mike. The Chargers and the Lions are the two teams who have the most losses over, I think, over maybe the last 3 seasons or something. Those two teams are tied for the most losses when leading by a touchdown or more in the fourth quarter. That is not a good stat to be leading the NFL in. I mean, if you're up by a touchdown or more entering the fourth quarter, you should be able to find ways to manage the game and pull out that victory. So, yes, all the props to the Cardinals in that game, but they were also playing the Chargers, who find ways to lose.
Right. That's the Chargers' MO, and their MO also is really turning it up in the second half of the season. So we'll see if that trend continues this year.
Certainly, Chargers fans, do not be worried. You guys start off slow every year and then find ways to sneak into the playoffs. Go, finding just being able to do just enough to get into the playoffs. And hey, you get the job done. However it gets done, it's a long season. So it's not a sprint, it's a long distance race. So definitely nothing to be scared of there with being 0-1. But now let's talk about some surprising 0-1 teams. You have the Kansas City Chiefs, you have the Chicago Bears, and you have the New England Patriots. All 3 of those teams, I think a lot of people were expecting big things out of, and really, they were letdowns in week 1. The Chiefs losing at home to the Tennessee Titans 26-10. Why don't we start off with them? Uncharacteristic of the Chiefs. I mean, I really thought under Andy Reid, that he's such a fundamentally sound coach. I was expecting big things out of them this year. I was thinking last year was not a fluke, and then they come out with that performance. I don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough way to start the season in front of your home fans. And you're right, I expected more from them this year, and now it's really looking downhill because they lost 2 players to Achilles injuries, Derek Johnson and Mike DeVito, first week of the season. That's 2 big defensive players that are gone now. So we'll have to see how they do without them.
And their offense didn't look too great, turning the ball over 3 times. And really, you think, all right, we have this one bad game to start off the season, but this could spiral very quickly because this week they've got Denver. And that is not exactly the team you want to see when things are looking bad.
Yeah, definitely not. Right off the bat, Jamal Charles, 7 carries, 19 yards. That's not going to get the job done versus anyone. He's definitely got to pick up his game if he wants anything to do with this team winning.
I mean, the Chiefs, I think their panic meter should be very high. I know it's only one game, but their offense did not look great at all. Their defense is now plagued with injuries. I think Kansas City is the team that came out of week 1 looking, or having the biggest disappointment from where their expectations were. I just think so much high expectations, and after week 1, those expectations seem to be very wrong. With a lackluster performance and the injuries, it's going to be a long season for Kansas City.
Definitely, and the way it's looking next week with Denver, looks like they might be starting the season off 0-2, so we'll see how that goes for them.
And now another team that could very well start off 0-2 is the Chicago Bears. They met up with the Buffalo Bills last week, and lost in overtime 23-20. And now this week they have the Sunday night game at San Francisco. The Bears, just like the Chiefs, are 0-1 and squaring off against a team that you do not want to see when you're in desperate need of a win.
Yeah, and traveling to San Francisco, that's not good for them. Definitely not.
No, I mean, and it's San Francisco's home opener. Last week they were on the road in Dallas. So the first game at Levi's Stadium, the San Francisco faithful are going to be coming out in strides at that game. And it could be pretty ugly for the Bears. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it looked like it should be a matchup of two 1-0 teams. And now that the Bears are 0-1, I really think they're going to drop to 0-2.
Yeah, they're going to have to turn it around. Jay Cutler's got to limit the turnovers. I mean, he threw 34, 49, 350 yards, 2 touchdowns, but the 2 interceptions it's not going to get it done. He's got to limit those turnovers if he wants to win.
Now, a third team that somehow is 0-1, it pains me to say this. The New England Patriots up 20-10 at halftime. Final score 33-20. Miami Dolphins. That pains me to say that. How do you give up 23 points to the Dolphins in the second half and get shut out? Unbelievable. But you know what? It was one game. It's a long season. I am not worried about this at all whatsoever. The New England Patriots will be 100% fine, and they will go on and have a 12-4 record.
Yeah, knowing the Patriots, a lot of problems last week with, I mean, it seemed like every play Brady was getting hit. That Miami pass rush is very good, and the losing Logan Mankins in that trade all of a sudden not looking like such a good idea. That O-line didn't seem to be able to stop anyone. But knowing the Patriots, I think Belichick's going to find a way to figure this out and not turn the season around, but, he'll, like you said, 12-4 definitely looks like a possibility.
I mean, the thing you have to look at, though, is with Belichick, they plug a player right in that fits in their system, and he does well. And, you mentioned the Logan Mankins trade. I would say that was a big deal, and definitely you noticed Mankins' absence there. But then you have to look at it. Mankins got injured in his first game with the Bucs. So, I mean, even if he was with the Patriots, he could be sidelined right now.
Yeah, of course. I mean, anything could happen like that. But, yeah, Belichick's going to figure this out. Brady, he'll get back to his old self. And it was actually nice to see Gronkowski back in there. He caught a touchdown pass, 4 catches, 40 yards. That was nice to see.
Great to see Gronk back on the field. I'm hoping he could sustain his health and find a way to be out there all 16 games and hopefully for 19 games, if you know what I mean there, 3 in the postseason. But before we wrap up week one more game we have to touch on. Talking about a team figuring it out finally, the Philadelphia Eagles. One of the most bizarre games of the week, probably the most bizarre. Hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars, a lot of people thought this game was going to be an absolute blowout for Philly, the way that they pounded on with offense. And the Jaguars come out, and the Jaguars looked great in the first half, leading 17-0 at halftime. But then finally, the Eagles woke up and scored 34 unanswered in the second half and rallied to win 34-17. I was seeing the updates with the scores, and 17-0 at halftime. I said to myself, how is this even possible? I'm glad the Eagles finally turned it around, but that was a scary first half if you're a Philly fan.
Yeah, I mean, if the game was 2 quarters, that would have been nice for the Jaguars, but you got to play all 4 quarters, and they definitely didn't do that. I mean, those 2 touchdowns came to that rookie Allen Hurns. He first 2 catches in the NFL were touchdowns. That's pretty good start to your career.
Yeah, not bad. 4 receptions, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not bad for a first game in the NFL. Welcome to the league, Hurns. That about wraps up our Week 1 recap. We'll be right back, and we will preview the second week in the National Football League regular season.
This is the New York Sports Machine on WICR.